President, and we have a few good items on the agenda this month, and so I will move on to the our agenda. Now, we have circulated the agenda to people on our mailing list, and so is there anyone who has any questions, additions, or corrections to this evening's agenda for the March 15th meeting? Well, seeing none, I will adopt the agenda, and the minutes for the February meeting, I believe they're already on the website. And has anyone in reviewing the minutes found any corrections or changes that they would like to make to last month's meeting minutes, the February meeting minutes? Okay, seeing none, then I will approve the minutes of the February meeting. I'd like to introduce our guests for this evening. We've got Bong Santo Domingo, we've got John Vizina, we've got Hadley Rodero, Lisa Floyd, and if there's anyone else in our meeting who's come from off island by way of the internet, please introduce yourself. Okay. Now, in terms of old business that we need to attend to, I believe that there is none at this time. So at this point, I'd like to move on to the committee and the board updates. If I could start by giving an update about the board, we do have 2 positions that are open on the board, and we have a couple of applications that are very good, and I apologize for not getting back to those people yet, but we have not made a decision because we wanted to keep this open to allow time for more people to get wind of this and communicate with us so that we could get as diverse a group as possible. But we have not forgotten the people who have applied. And as I said, we've got some very good applicants for our board positions, and we will be making a decision after our next board meeting, which will be the first Monday of April. We were just keeping the positions open, as I said before, to make sure that an article we circulated in the Beachcomber would get seen by everyone. And so we're still going to be taking in applications, but we will be making our decision after the first Monday meeting in April. The next committee I'd like to introduce is the Active Transportation Committee, and Adam Foster is the chair of that committee. So Adam, do you have a report for us about what's been going on with the Active Transportation Committee?
Hi, David. Thank you. Can everybody hear me today?
Good. Yeah.
So I have a lot to cover in a short amount of time. So I have prepared remarks. I'm just going to kind of read so that everybody can see what our committee's been up to lately. Once again, my name is Adam Foster, and I'm the chair of the Council's Active Transportation Committee. We're still getting our feet under us, but we've already created 3 social media accounts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Our handle on all 3 is at Vashon-ATC for Active Transportation Committee. We're also about to finish developing our logo and our website. We've been working on that a lot lately as well. The ATC is very busy working on several projects and programs which are designed to improve the safety of active transportation users, mostly bicyclists and pedestrians in our community. For instance, we are currently working on the Regional Trail Project, and we are currently assisting the Senior Center with improving the safety of crossing at Bank and 100. One future project we are beginning to work on will be the use of community crosswalks and street paintings as traffic calming devices at low volume intersections. We'll also be exploring the use of Sharrow bike markings as spot treatments to increase visibility and awareness of bicyclists on the island, particularly in areas where there are no shoulders or known shoulder obstructions. We also have several programs in development, such as a community safety vest program intended to increase the visibility of active transportation users on the island, and educational programs such as a shared streets pledge and a crossing safety program known as Every Corner is a Crosswalk. There are some important dates coming up that will affect active transportation users on the island. March 22nd is the deadline for public comments on the draft ADA transition plan. If you're experiencing difficulties navigating the sidewalks or crosswalks on Vashon, your feedback could help bring some much needed sidewalk improvements to our community. Also, March 31st is the deadline for King County's community needs list. The county's listening, go tell them what you want. And I can provide more information on any of this to anyone who is interested. Our committee normally meets on Mondays from 5 to 6:30 p.m. via Zoom, except for weeks when there's a general council meeting like today. Our committee is still in the process of educating ourselves, so we've booked some wonderful guest speakers for our upcoming meeting. On March 22nd, David Dahl from the Community Survey will be our guest speaker. On March 29th, John Anderson will be our guest speaker. John is an expert on active transportation, and he also helped to develop the county's draft ADA transition plan. Then on April 5th, our guest speaker will be Vashon historian Bruce Hallman. Bruce will discuss the history of road development and design on Vashon and how it has changed over the years to meet the demands of different users. If anyone would like any more information about our committee's work or would like to volunteer to help, please email me at adam@vmicc.net. Thanks.
Yeah, good job, Adam. Thank you very much. And so the next committee that we'd like to hear from is the, excuse me. Oh, I didn't have the latest right there. Here it is. The Communications Committee, Camille Reeves and Diane Emerson.
Camille, you want to go first? Because you've got a lot to talk about, I think.
Yeah, so I was actually just trying to help our new, I think who's going to be our new co-chair of the Communications Committee, Mika. She can't get on the meeting right now, unfortunately, so I was just trying to troubleshoot with her. But yeah, so we have Mika coming on board as our new co-chair, and she is very active on social media. I feel like our social media presence has really kicked up. There's been a lot of activity, which is really exciting. We still need help in terms of promotion, sharing posts on Instagram and Facebook and all those kinds of things. Anytime people can kind of comment or share or do any of that, anytime you see something, it's always really helpful because it helps to kind of spread the word further out. So those of you who are active on social media, you don't even need to get in touch with the committee. You can just do it when you see it. If you are interested in being more actively involved in the committee, you can email me, and my email is camille@vmicc.net. And yeah, just let me know, give me a shout. But that's pretty much the extent of it. Diane, do you want to share about the website?
Yes, on the website, the latest change that we've made is that we've created a separate page just for upcoming meetings, and so that our homepage is more geared for people who just kind of came upon the website and aren't necessarily there to come to a meeting. And then, so that's on the website. And then the other thing is that I've been working on is the logo. And I've contacted several designers on the island so that we have a nice selection of logos for the board to consider and then for the whole community to consider. So there's progress being made and you'll be kept updated on that. So that's it for me.
Well, thank you, Diane and Camille. And let's see, the dog park committee. I believe that we're starting a dog park committee. So do we have someone from that committee to speak to us?
Can you hear me? This is Mike Chomsky.
Yeah.
I'm interim chair for the dog park committee. Their charter is to basically look to have an off-leash dog park here on Vashon Island, and more importantly, to find out why we don't have one and what efforts are underway or why things have failed. I've been in contact with, I think, Dee Munson. Camille had referred Dee to me, and we've had a bit of an exchange over email, and I'm trying to reach out to, or trying to network during a pandemic, which is not exactly easy to do, to find out a little bit more about what efforts have gone on in the past. And I was put in contact with a couple of people that I'm trying to reach out to. So basically, I'm just in the networking phase right now. I'm hoping to meet twice a month to network and find out a little bit more about the story. And see where we are with things. I've heard that there's some efforts that have moved forward and some people who might have land. So that's pretty much all I have.
Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you for making the effort. And I know that a lot of people would be happy to have an off-leash dog park, and it's always nice not to reinvent the wheel. So your efforts at looking to see what's already been done is always a good first start. So go ahead.
The important thing is it's not to forget what has been done too. So part of this is also documentation and sharing with the island. So it's not just pursuing the off-leash dog park, but also carrying forward the history of like why things worked or didn't work, so that we don't reinvent the wheel unnecessarily.
Well, thank you again. And as you the old timers here probably know, a lot of the work of the community council is done through the committees, where they can study issues in more detail and get more community participation before bringing items to the general membership meeting. And so if there are issues on the island that people think need to be addressed, starting a committee is a good way to do it. We have an active transportation committee. We do not yet have a traffic safety committee, which had been an old standby for the community council. Now, we've been having our King County Sheriff Major Jeff Flora, come and speak to the meetings. He can't come this week because he has a family commitment, but he asked me to mention that the Judd Creek Bridge is going to be closed for construction, which will require rerouting through different neighborhoods. And they've already noticed that there are speeding problems among these new routes. And so I want to caution people, if you have a lead foot, be aware the sheriffs will be watching, okay? And if you don't have a lead foot, thank you. You know, it's always better for the safety of the island. So if people are interested in starting a committee or joining an active committee, I'd really encourage that. Now, let's see. As I mentioned, okay, I think we've got a few more people on board now. I'd mentioned earlier that the board has been trying to fill 2 positions. We have come very close to doing that, but we wanted to keep it open and get as many applicants as we possibly can before making our decision. So I apologize to the people who've submitted their application for not getting back to them, but it will be done at our next meeting of the board, which is the first Monday in April. Now, in terms of our new business, let's let's see, Diane Emerson has indicated that she will be facilitating a discussion about affordable housing. Now, I see Jacob Midling there, and I had told Brad that we were not going to get to this till 7:30. So if someone could just give a call to Brad and get him involved, because I know that it's an interesting topic for him and he's got a lot that he can share with the island. But Diane, I'll give you the floor at this time.
Okay, yes, I did try calling the number that he gave and no one answered. And Camille is right now, at this very moment, trying to reach him as well. So we're doing our best to get him on the call, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. He won't miss too much. So what we're doing with this discussion tonight is I've put it out there for people to please send comments and ideas in advance. And I've got 6 wonderful comments to read to everyone. And then if you have comments in this meeting, please put them in the chat. And Nick is going to be tracking the chat comments. And if you really want to speak about this issue, in the chat, please say, I want to say something. And when we get to people who want to just say something about this issue, I'll time it, and ideally between 1 and 2 minutes, and I'll have to cut people off after 2 minutes because we don't have a lot of time, and there's a lot of comments I'm sure that people want to say. There's so many facets to this discussion, and so many. And it's a very, very important issue for our community. And there are a lot of different things that we can be doing to help this situation. And this will be the beginning. We don't have a committee yet. We are forming a committee to work on this issue. So as we go through this discussion, please think about if you would like to be on the mailing list for this committee to be kept informed, or if you'd like to be on the committee and be part of the committee that will be working on this issue. And all you need to do is put in the chat what your preference is and include your email. And I'll make sure that you get on the appropriate list as we move forward. Okay, so I'm going to begin by reading the comments that people had submitted in advance. The first one is Carly Christofferson. She says, my husband and I grew up on the island and are now raising our little girls here. Our property taxes are outrageous. My fear is that we will not be able to afford to live in the home we've built on the island due to this extreme cost King County levies on us. Please help. So that's first comment. And I'm not going to be taking any comments on these. I'm just going to be reading them to you for now. And these will all be collected for the committee. The second is Adam Foster, who you just heard from recently. In response to the affordable housing crisis on Vashon, our committee, the Active Transport Committee, is currently working on bringing an active transportation facility to Vashon. These infrastructure projects benefit low-income and underserved communities. Since COVID began, auto loan defaults nationally have skyrocketed. Owning and maintaining a car is very expensive, and many low-income residents simply can no longer afford it. Any future committee that works on bringing some much-needed low-income housing to Vashon may want to coordinate with our committee's efforts. It would be important to make sure that any new low-income housing developments connect to any proposed ATF. It's an umbrella definition for things such as regional trails, heritage trails, side paths, bicycle boulevards, etc. Thanks, Adam, Chair of the Active Transportation Committee. The third comment is from Terry Sullivan. He has 3 main points he'd like to share. 1, lack of affordable housing is a systemic problem due to the commodification of housing, building codes, building industry profits, zoning, and more. This has put housing out of reach for most people. Current affordable housing development only puts a Band-Aid on it. Housing is a right, and no stigma or special status should be attached to lower income people acquiring it. Point 2. Little attention has been paid to proactively protect and enhance and make sustainable for the long term the existing rental stock on Vashon. It is being continually removed and replaced by higher end housing. Point 3. We need to think outside the box and utilize proven ways to provide and sustain affordable housing. A community land trust can take housing and other uses off the commodity market, such as in Burlington, Vermont. Accessory dwelling units, ADUs, can cheaply increase density without large projects and can provide an opportunity for informal help arrangements for elderly or otherwise compromised homeowners. Both can address individual properties and distribute affordable housing in a natural way throughout the community. That's Terry Sullivan. Next we have Zena McCoy. Zena says, I strongly believe that affordable housing is the biggest problem on Vashon today. There are almost no rentals and houses are out of range for most people. The only way to bring down prices is by building more, supply and demand. I know many people on Vashon don't want the island to change. However, if we don't build more, we will only have prices keep rising. I think there should be a push to upzone the island. Allow 1 or 2 ADUs, accessory dwelling units, on every parcel. Allow people who have 5 and 10 acre plots to subdivide. Allow condos uptown. Allow easier permitting to put up mobile homes, yurts, and tiny homes. Many people will say you will ruin the character of the island by allowing more building, but it is the only solution. There should be incentives to homeowners to add extra housing on their land to use for affordable rentals. These are my opinions. I see a disconnect between the boomer generation that bought on the island 30 years ago when it was affordable and don't want the island to change, and my generation, millennials, who are completely priced out. Thank you for your time. Next we have Shannon Flora. Shannon says, we are very interested in creating supportive housing for our 24-year-old daughter who has disabilities. We have minimal family and need to have her in a positive situation someday. I would like to see a setting where folks with disabilities can live in a co-housing or shared housing situation with some minimal supports. Maybe a support person could have free or reduced rent. Ability to use Section 8 funding could come into play. How do we create a community environment for our active adults with cognitive disabilities so they are not stuck alone in an apartment? Important things for most folks with disabilities is to be safe walking distance to town and on the bus line, since many don't drive, and being visible and active in the community would be ideal. We've been working with a group of friends in Seattle to pursue this type of community, but my daughter would like to live on Vashon. I can offer information of what we've done to this point. We are working with Homestead Community Land Trust, and they bring a lot of expertise. If they can get a property donated, they can do the development that can be a combination or ownership and rental opportunities. Combination of ownership and rental opportunities. Below and at market rates. They asked that I talk with Vashon Household to ensure they would not be stepping in anyone's toes, and I did. At the time, Vashon Household indicated they were maxed out and would have no issues with HCT pursuing something in Vashon. They create below market rate opportunities for home ownership. Could we find a place and a group of people that would be up for working with them to create an opportunity? In our case, our daughter does have a trust that would need to, quote, own a home, but it is a possibility worth pursuing. Might there be landowners who might receive tax benefits if they were involved? Thanks for adding this concern to the mix. Our final comment submitted in advance is from Kim Kambach. Dear council members, I believe all affordable housing must be mixed use. Retail, human services, recreation, educational spaces, and housing. The property values will likely be and remain higher. The comprehensive traffic study will determine the best locations on bus lines with easy bike or pedestrian paths to town for the site. And mixed use helps ease the NIMBY burden. Okay, so those are the comments on this very thorny topic that have been submitted in advance. And now I expect that Nick has been tracking the chat for the comments that people have shared. And Nick, would you like to go ahead and share those with us?
So far, most of the comments are from Armin, and he would also like to speak for 1 to 2 minutes. There's a comment from Jacob Middling that says, I have a layout for up to 46 homes up near K2 on our blank 6.5 acres if anyone cares to see. All would be roughly 8 to 1,200 square feet, would need zoning and water availability for affordable housing. I imagine that Brad will speak on that later. So I think up first is Armin Yusufian. So Armin, if you want to unmute yourself.
Okay, I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me okay? Okay, this is obviously a complex issue, and I'm just going to be very brief and touch on some highlights. I think this boils down to a supply versus demand issue, you know, the oldest law in economics. So on the supply side, supply is limited for a number of reasons, and I'll just run through them. You go back to 1990, 30 years ago, the state legislature passed the Growth Management Act. We're one of a few states that has such a restriction that creates a restriction on supply. This was voted down twice by the public, kind of like the baseball stadium, and passed by the legislature anyway. Then in 2004, we had the critical areas ordinances. At some point on Vashon, zoning restrictions were passed where for most of the island, I believe it's a minimum of 5 acres for one house. Along the water, it's different. But so in the city of Seattle, 1 acre would be about 1 city block. You would have maybe 20 homes, and here would be, you know, 1/100th that density. Then, of course, there are water issues. And this is changing for the worse. Because of the COVID restrictions, people are leaving Seattle because they can work remotely. Seattle is having significant out-migration, and people realize they can live anywhere. If they still want to live sort of in the Seattle area, Vashon has an attraction, besides the attraction it has anyway. Then there's the whole business with regard to rentals, that all of these restrictions on landlords, the COVID moratorium on evictions, people being able to live without paying rent while the landlord still pays real estate taxes and so on, is causing landlords in droves to be selling their single-family house rentals to owner occupants. And I just attended a 3-hour event last Thursday on this. Then the demand, and I only have about 2 points there. People are leaving major cities, again, because they can work remotely. People leaving New York City, the #1 destination for people leaving New York City is the Seattle area. In the case of San Francisco, people leaving San Francisco, Seattle is in the top 10. So we just have increasing demand for Vashon, and the greater outside Seattle metropolitan area in general, and severe restrictions on supply that are only getting worse because of all these regulations. And I hate to say it, it's probably not going to make me popular on this forum, but all these regulations are by the people that Democrats keep re-voting into office for the last 30 years, and that's Democrats. These regulations alone, there was a Harvard study that in the Seattle market, the cost of regulations adds $200,000, or maybe it was $300,000 to the cost of a house. So that's my 2 minutes or so worth.
Thank you, Armin. It went longer, and that's fine. We don't have a lot of people who want to speak, and we don't have a lot of comments in the chat. So I was very happy to be able to give you that much time to talk about this issue in a perspective that we haven't heard yet. So thank you very much. Nick, is there anybody else, any other chat comments that should be read, or anyone else who wishes to speak? Is Brad Middling available, for example?
Haven't heard from Brad yet. There's a comment from Stephen Brewer. It says, I believe there would be a high interest in providing education on ADUs, which is accessory dwelling unit. What's allowed, what isn't, where to build, and what's needed. And then Tanya Roberts would like to speak. So Tanya, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Gotta figure out where you do it on this. Okay, thank you. I did send some comments in, but obviously they got misplaced or something or other. One thing I'm particularly interested in is having affordable housing be along bus lines. So I'm glad the Transportation Committee is so active. The second thing I would like to mention is that there's some property just south of Docton that the Docton Water Board wants to sell, 25 acres. And there's some community opposition, of course, but I think the 5 acres that's closest to the road, they have lots of water in Docton, would be a very attractive place to put in some affordable housing. I was thinking of fourplexes on one side, a community center, and tiny houses on the other side. And I had a third point, but I forgot it. Thanks.
Tanya, thank you very much, and I really apologize I didn't catch your comments. It's been really crazy for me these last couple of weeks. I'm very, very sorry. I'm going to look for them again and make sure that they get into the written comments, okay? So anyone else? Nick, is there anyone we're missing here? Anyone else would like to?
Susan Reamer says, the issue of housing is very important to Vashon Community Care as one of the island's largest employers. It effectively tightens up the labor pool and is costly to pay ferry fares. Debbie Jackson says, I agree that the housing land trust idea is a good one. Regarding zoning and growth management planning, the water availability is essential to be aware of. Melvin Mackey says, what is the effect on Vashon of using housing for 1 or 2 night rentals? And I'm going to assume that he's talking about specifically things like VRBO and Airbnb.
Hello, this is Brad. Is my speaker on?
Yes, it is, Brad. We can hear you loud and clear. Come on, please share with us.
This is the first time I've ever tried this system, so this is fantastic. Hey, I would like to chat about, I bought the K2 complex and we're doing a environmental cleanup there, and it's all volunteer status. The 6 acres next door we purchased, and we thought we might be able to figure out how to get the zoning switched to multiple, for housing. And so far, everybody I've talked to at the city has not been real apt to want to change the zoning because it had just been changed. And so, but we have had a drawing done that it puts, I think, about 48 homes, and it is small homes, which are from about 800 square feet to about 1,250, maybe 1,500 square feet. I don't truly remember the numbers, but I thought, you know, it would be a great little spot. It's on the bus line. It's close to town. There's lots of jobs within a 1 mile radius. Everything I did, it seemed to fit the program. And I think that if a bunch of us wanted to get together, I would certainly be thrilled for that particular spot. And I have other opportunities, but much smaller. And of course, the city, you know, when it comes to drainage and the runoff waters, holding ponds and setbacks, and there's a few things that obviously could be rather costly. So if we try to keep from allowing the city to force us to do a bunch of things that are, in my opinion, unnecessary, that we could hold the cost down, and then we could supply housing for a bunch of these people that really need housing. And I'm not saying just, I would like to do a mixed housing group, which is some low income, some elderly, and some of the you know, working folks that may or may not make enough money. But and instead of having just focus on one type of group. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on.
Okay, well, we do have a few more minutes on the agenda, and so Nick, is there any other comments that we can throw in here?
Yeah, Camille says, what is the feasibility of a rent cap? I can say that unincorporated King County is the only laws about rents and rentals in unincorporated King County. It's overseen by the Office of Civil Rights and Open Government. So that would be a question for them.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention that I didn't quite touch on. How about 100-year leases? So let's say there's a property uptown, 18 acres, and I don't know who bought it, but I do know that it's recently been acquired, probably a year or two ago. And I think that the 100-year lease for Vashon would be a really great opportunity to provide spots for people to build homes as well. It's done all over the South in retirement communities and even not retirement communities. So that would be something that I would be super interested in discussing.
Okay, well, we found a lot of issues that are going to be put into the mix, and the committee, if people want to work on this, there's plenty of research that needs to be done for ADUs and 100-year leases and many other topics, so that we as a community can be much more knowledgeable about what our options are. I'll throw one in the mix as well, and that is increasing the minimum wage, for having Vashon join Seattle with minimum wages, because that's another thing that will help people afford the more expensive rent on the island. Okay, so David, did you want to say something?
I did. This has always been, you know, a big issue for me on Vashon, and there are very competing concerns that are very valid concerns when this is brought up on Vashon, and one of them is the restrictive zoning on Vashon, where you have large parcels, 10-acre, 5-acre, and 1-acre zoning. That was enacted by the county council after a water study was done on the island, and zoning was addressed for a good long time in the early 80s to address our water issue. And it's not just the quantity of water, but it's the quality of the water, because most people live on septic systems, and if you have too many septic systems, there will be pollution of the water source. And so Vashon is one of the only communities I can think of in the United States that based its zoning on, water quality issues, which is an important concern. On the other hand, when we did the town plan, one of the main concerns of the town plan was to allow people to work on the island and live on the island, and even better, to be able to walk to work. So when Brad has a property like the K2 property, which is in the town plan area and would allow people to walk to work, it is one of the ideal locations for affordable housing. So that's a major concern. And I see Jill Jano waving her hand. So this is one of the reasons for having a committee, so that you can address these competing concerns and try to work out some compromises. I know that when I was on Vashon Household, which has provided some good affordable housing on the island, the land trust or the housing trust idea was explored and has been successfully explored. It's a way to keep down the cost of these houses so that you don't have people taking profit on it. But I really think this is a great topic for the island, and I encourage people to apply or to join in this committee. So Jill, you had a comment?
Please unmute yourself, Jill.
Thank you. So I remember several years ago, affordable housing, small, really nice looking affordable housing was built on the island. And I was disappointed to find out that that at least one of the places was being rented out to somebody who worked in Seattle. And there was some sort of a legal complication there that you couldn't specify that the housing could only be for people who work on Vashon. Although I think a lot of people who were behind the affordable housing development were thinking that that housing would go to people who work on Vashon. Secondly, I've looked into the ADU thing and I would be more than happy to do it. I have enough space that I could do it, but I don't have enough space for a whole new septic system. You have to put in a separate septic system. If you have a kitchen in your ADU, it has to have a whole septic system of its own, which starts to make the cost prohibitive.
Okay, well, I think our time is up. If there's anyone who's really has an urgent comment they'd like to make, otherwise, this has been a very good start. Oh, are you, Tanya would like to say something? Okay, Tanya. Unmute yourself, Tanya.
Hello, this is Brad.
Okay, let's see, Hunter, could you unmute Tanya?
Thank you. Thank you. Jill, to your comment about the sewage, I've been watching stuff on tiny houses for a long time, and there's this new thing where they have the sewage that can be recycled. So, and that's under some of the green regulations that they're looking on King County's website. So I think that's an option worth looking into. The second thing I wanted to say is I also saw a video where in one city where they'd had a big employer leave the city. They ended up with having some of the community colleges or whatever teach housing rehab skills. And then they also made them available to some of the students that were working on this to buy them. And so I'm thinking, you know, my mom lived in Yarrow Point and she sold her house and it was torn down for another house. And she was afraid that that's what was going to happen. So there's a lot of, and it was a great house. It just wasn't big enough. So I'm just wondering if we have this whole Seattle area with all kinds of houses, whether they're low-income houses in the Rainier Beach area or high-income houses. Couldn't we maybe take advantage of some of those and rehab them and put them on Vashon? Just a
Okay,
thought.
thank you, Tanya. And the next item on the agenda, and thank you, Diane, for leading the discussion. And as you can see, it's go ahead.
Could I say one more thing before we're done?
Sure, Brad.
Hey, you know, years ago, I did the farm home loans on Vashon. They're the low income low income qualifiers that get these loans from the government. And I know they don't do that anymore. And well, not here. And so we built the houses, and I think that I would buy the lots for 25,000 back then, 50,000. And I think that when they purchased them from me, because I kind of preset it, and then they would purchase them from me for 125 to 157,000. That was our parameters back in and I think it was the mid 90s probably. But the problem that we had was there wasn't a restriction on how much they could flip that house for. And so instead of doing that 3% yearly or something similar to the land trust did or the housing deal, I think that was a huge mistake. And it should have had a cost of living only that they could have sold or refinanced for. So that was something to think about.
Thanks, Brad. And like I said, this is a topic that needs a lot of discussion. And so the committee, which will be formed, is a great place for that. And I encourage people, do we have any like first meeting date or anything like that, Diane? Okay. Perhaps, how could we arrange for that?
The first thing is to have an interim chair of the committee. And we do have someone who has expressed an interest. Rita Schenk has expressed an interest in being the interim chair. The interim chair will call the committee, call the first meeting, and at that meeting, or maybe the second one, the people who want to be on the committee will elect a permanent chair of the committee. So that's the next step. The first step is finding an interim chair and getting confirmation that Rita wants to do this. And if not Rita, then someone else needs to step forward to be interim chair.
Okay. And then that interim chair will make an announcement for the first meeting. Great.
Yes, and we will help promote it. The communications committee will help promote that meeting.
Excellent. The next item on our agenda is the Ferry, well, it's the a discussion from the Washington State Ferry people concerning the Fauntleroy Ferry dock repairs that are about to start. And John Vizina is here from Washington State Ferries to address the topic. John, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, David. I appreciate the time. And I'm actually going to turn things over to my colleague, Hadley Rodero, who is our public outreach and communications manager who's taking the lead on this. She'll go over that, and then I'll pipe in it when she's finished and talk about ferry advisory committees. Hadley?
Yes, great. Hi, thanks, John, and thanks all of you. This is a great turnout for your meeting. I'm here to really just give a plug for some upcoming public meetings that we're having this week, one on Wednesday and one on Thursday. that it's our official kickoff for a new project that's going to look at solutions to replace the Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal. As many of you know, that terminal was built in the 1950s and has lots of challenges, operational challenges, as well as some elements that just need to be replaced, like aging timber pile underneath the dock, 2 toll booths to accommodate 2 different routes, 2 different destinations. It's one of our lowest docks in the system. So with sea level rise, there's the issue of high tides bumping up underneath the dock and damaging the structure. So there's lots of issues that we need to look at over the next several years. And we're just kicking off the environmental process to look at different alternatives for how we would go about preserving and replacing that dock. And it's something that we hope all 3 communities, Fauntleroy and Vashon and South Kitsap County, will get involved in, and your input will be really critical as we look at different solutions. So we're having public meetings on Wednesday and Thursday this week that will be a chance to learn more about the project, learn more about the community engagement process, and then offer some comments. We're also going to be forming a community advisory group, which will be a group that has members from all 3 communities that will meet with us for the next couple of years to help advise us through the environmental review process. And after the meetings in the next week or 2, we'll be opening up the application process for those groups, and hoping that we'll get lots of applications from members of this group and others on Vashon to be part of that committee. We'll also have an executive advisory group made up of elected officials and the executives from our partner agencies and transit agencies, as well as a technical advisory group made up of technical staff from some of our agencies that we work closely with. So a lot to come. I'm going to put in your chat the email address or the website address for our project website, which is where you can find out more about the public meetings that are coming up and register to participate in those. The public meetings are going to be held virtually. They'll be on GoToWebinar as the platform. If any of you participated in our Washington State Ferry system-wide public meetings that we held about a month ago, it'll be a very similar format. You'll hear a presentation about the project, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience that will have a panel of Ferry staff and some of our project team members there to answer your questions. So with that, I think I'll let John talk about the FAC unless anybody has any questions right off the bat about the Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal project and the process that we're just embarking on. David, I don't know if you want me to take questions now or wait till after John speaks.
Sure, you could take questions right now if you'd like. I know, wasn't the last update around 1984, 85?
Yeah, a portion of the dock was replaced at that time. A lot of the dock dates back to 1957, I believe it is. So there's parts that's a little bit newer. We've been making some spot preservation changes, preservation work, replacing one pile here and there. Some of you may have noticed about a month ago, we had single lane offloading. We were replacing 3 pilings underneath the dock. So every time we do that, there's some minor operational impacts when we just do 1 or 2 at a time. And this is really to look at the whole dock and the whole project.
I would love to ask a question if you don't mind.
Sure.
Wonderful. I'm so glad that you're on, and I've signed up for the community meetings later on in the week. I am just curious if currently, as you're ideating what to do with this ferry, are you thinking of just to replace a like with a like as far as like just the ferry terminal, or are you thinking of retail spaces and like a more elaborate plan?
Well, the project is what's classified as a preservation project, which means replacing the need for the project and preserving the function of the dock. So something that would be more of an improvement project is where you'd see that additional development side of a project. So I'm not sure we've talked about things like retail, but we are going to look at every option for how we would replace the function of the terminal, the fact that it needs to serve Vashon and Southworth and a certain number of ferries a day and that kind of thing. So that's the types of alternatives that we're looking at.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Hadley. And I guess we can turn to John for update on the FAC.
Yeah, and just before I launch into that, Stephen, I'm really pleased to hear you're going to attend. And it's hard with groups like you all that are already, you're here on a Monday night, you're already doing this, and it sounds like a lot of good work on other things. But this project is going to be really important to Vashon. And, it's a complicated process that we're going to go through as we decide what to do with that dock. It's one of the rare places we have with 3 different jurisdictions. West Seattle is City of Seattle, you all are King County, Southworth is Kitsap County. And so we really need robust participation. So, and we hope communication and collaboration so that people on each part of that triangle can really help each other understand, their needs and what's important. So, we're doing, as Hadley said, we're doing one Wednesday during the day and then Thursday evening, trying to make it as easy as possible for people to participate.
Yeah, John, thanks for bringing that up. Let me just jump back in to further that thought that we have been sort of moving a little bit slowly in our planning process for this project over the last year because of the pandemic and because of the West Seattle Bridge closure really changed the transportation landscape in West Seattle. And now that we're restarting the process, we think there's a lot of possibilities for our community engagement with the virtual meeting format, such as this, where we could bring all 3 communities together in the same meeting and you could hear from each other, which is a little bit different than when we do open houses in Vashon and one in Fauntleroy and one in Southworth, and you don't hear from the others. So I just second what John said. We really hope that Vashon will get engaged. And we've already had a lot of interest from the Fauntleroy community in this project, which is not a surprise because it's right in their backyards there. So I hope we'll get as much interest from Vashon, and certainly we'd love to hear any thoughts you have right now or in the next couple of weeks about how we can do community engagement that really works for your community and for this group in particular.
Is it still a possibility to have 2 slips, or is that not a possibility?
That's again one of the options we will look at. I mean, we're so early that we haven't even developed alternatives yet. So that's something that we'll certainly consider, and there'll be an option for the community to weigh in with when we get to the scoping phase of the project with things that you think we should look at.
Okay, thank you. And I would encourage everyone to try to participate in these meetings, because when you don't speak out on an issue, you're not heard and you have no voice. So we need to participate.
Okay.
Oh, John, you're muted. Could we unmute?
Yep,
Okay,
I
great.
got it. Sorry about that. David, thanks for saying that. I'm one of the 10 directors at WSF. Hadley's one of our lead managers, and we helped lead the Triangle Task Force a couple of years ago that looked at the rewrite of the Triangle schedule. And, Vashon had really good participation through that process. And then, certainly as we came out with drafts, people really got excited and interested. But in this case, the earlier you can be involved, the better for the project. And that's actually a good, I think, segue into the Ferry Advisory Committees, because when we do things like the schedule rewrite or this, we really look to our Ferry Advisory Committees and their members. And I'm really pleased to see Justin Hirsch, who's one of Vashon's 3 Ferry Advisory Committees, in the meeting. We have 13 Ferry Advisory Committees. They represent pretty much every terminal in the system except Seattle. And then Vashon, both Tahlequah and Vashon, that's one Ferry Advisory Committee. And, they advise us on schedules, passenger experience. They're really a way for us to hear directly from our passengers. Some passengers will reach out to customer service, and we certainly listen and answer those questions and take those comments seriously. But the Ferry Advisory Committees, the 13 chairs meet monthly. I meet with them as I'm the government relations director, as well as the liaison to the Ferry Advisory Committees. And it's really a good, helpful way for, especially people like you who live on an island. And in my 5 years at WSF, I've done a fair number of community meetings in on Vashon, and I know how passionate you are. I know how direct you are about the service we provide, or in some cases, I think you tell me we don't provide. So, you know, I can't say enough about the Ferry Advisory Committees, especially now with Emily Scott, Eric Beckman, and Justin Hirsch. Really good people who care about the island and our service and help us better understand. And I'm gonna post something in the chat if you all are interested. So the Ferry Advisory Committees, it's uniquely written in RCW that they are appointed by their local county councils, and then they advise us. So they're not appointed by the state, they go through their councils. But if you go to that link, you'll see that in the RCW, in the state law, Vashon is different than every other group who's appointed by their council. It specifically says that the Vashon FAC will be appointed by the Vashon-Maury Island Community Council. And that happened in the past, but when the previous council dissolved, that then fell to King County. So for the last several years, the King County Council has been making appointments. They've done a good job from my perspective. We've got good members. But now that you've reconstituted, it would be great if you all would have a decision, or a discussion about whether you want to take that role on again. You know, obviously it's super important who represents you. And actually Eric Beckman, who's been on for the last couple of years, is moving off island. So there's a vacancy coming up in the next month or so. So if I could ask you to put that on your agenda to discuss of whether you would like to create a format for appointing his replacement to join Justin and Emily, or, for either now or forever, you'd like the King County Council to maintain that role. I know from talking to Councilmember McDermott's office, they're hopeful that that's something that you would be interested in. They're certainly willing to do it, and they've done a good job with it. And he and his LA Melissa have been really involved, and I appreciate that. But I think it's a way this council could really have a big impact on our service. So I will end my filibuster of talking at that. And as I said, Justin Hirsch is here if you have questions. Hadley's worked with FACs longer than I have, so any of the three of us would be happy to take any questions or hear any comments.
I think we'll run this by the board in terms of the appointment process, but it seems like a natural thing for the community council to do. I was the president of the community council, I think, when they started the Ferry Advisory Committees, and I was on a number of Ferry Advisory Committees, and I expect that it's gotten a lot better than it used to be, that there is more input at these meetings, and that the Ferry people who are at these meetings pay good attention to the input that they're getting, because I recall being very frustrated early in the process that people from the Ferry system would come to meetings without notepads. And so this was true, and it was remarkable. But it sounds from what Justin Hirsch has told us that this has been changing in a good way.
I'll second that, just to throw my 2 cents in there.
I appreciate that. I certainly take the comments from Ferry Advisory Committee members seriously. Justin, when he asks questions, I get back to him, and it's difficult because we can't always do what we're asked to do, but I'm always responsive and try to give a full explanation of what's happening.
Thank you for working on that. It's great to have input in the process, and we need it.
Well, and you all are so our island communities, Vashon and the San Juans, and Whidbey to a certain extent, although they can drive off the north end, we really need to understand at a base level what your experiences are like, because it impacts your life. And I've been in tough conversations with people from Vashon trying to get to chemotherapy appointments, or people who are waiting, in hours-long lines at Fauntleroy. So, having a robust FAC helping us is terrific.
Great, great. Well, thank you for coming to our meeting or joining our meeting, and thank you, Hadley, for updating us on the Fauntleroy Ferry dock. And I back in the 80s when that was, I guess, a minor rebuild, it was horrendous, the kind of traffic congestion it caused. And I know personally, in a 2-day period, I was the first car left behind 4 times, which is remarkable. But so you can understand, it was frustrating. But
yeah.
I hope this time that the traffic rerouting is done, in a better way.
Yeah, I think it'll be an important conversation. And then to go back to what I said about our community advisory group and sort of follow on what John said, we will be having a seat on that community advisory group for each of our ferry advisory committees. So Vashon, Southworth, and Fauntleroy. So there'll be a chance to sort of, if you appoint a new member, you'll have 3 members on your FACs. One of them will sit on the advisory group for the project. And then we'd love to have a representative from this group, the community council, and then we'll have other sort of citizen representatives. So I think there's many opportunities for residents of Vashon to get involved in the project.
Great. Thank you. Okay, are there any last questions for either of our people from the state ferry system? Okay, well then we can move on to the next item on the agenda.
David,
which is,
sorry, I see Justin Hirsch had his hand up.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Justin, I missed you.
Okay, I'll just wanted to say, thanks, John and Hadley, for coming to the meeting, and just to echo that both of them are incredibly responsive to the FACs. They really go above and beyond to answer our questions. We don't always like the answers, but that's the nature of big projects. So that is what it is. Obviously we're pretty early on in the process talking about the Fauntleroy dock. I got to take the opportunity again to reiterate what I personally believe are the 3 keys to success at Fauntleroy. 1, passenger loading that's physically separated from vehicle loading such that both can occur simultaneously. 2, dock capacity that matches or exceeds vessel capacity such that departures are not delayed by fare collection. And 3, effective traffic control to minimize or eliminate the frustration, accidents, road rage, and violence that regularly occurs on Fauntleroy Way Southwest. So I know I'm a bit of a broken record saying that, but that's kind of how we get things done. That's kind of sometimes how we got to do it. John and Hadley put up with me a lot, so thanks, and I'm done.
Thank you, Justin, and thanks for being a broken record, because those are very important issues to address. Okay, the next item that we have on our agenda is King County Department of Community and Human Services Health Survey, and is Lisa Floyd available? I don't see her here. Well, I guess we could circle back to her if someone can contact her, and we could move on to new motions. The Active Transportation Committee was going to formally request that the county seek funding for a feasibility study. And I'll let Adam lead that discussion if you could.
Hi, so once again, my name's Adam Foster, and I'm the chair of the Council's Active Transportation Committee. I'm just going to read again from prepared remarks on this issue so that I make sure I hit the important parts. Our committee's mission is to advocate for active transportation users, and that's people such as bicyclists and pedestrians on Vashon and Maury Island. Page 58 of the Vashon-Maury Island sub-area plan discusses the history of our community's efforts, and this is going all the way back to 1971, to try and build a regional trail or other such, quote, active transportation facility on the island, connecting the town core to the north and south end ferry terminals. Policy P7 of the sub-area plan acknowledges that the community has long desired such a facility and that the county should work with community organizations such as our committee to seek funding for a feasibility study on this project. Therefore, the Active Transportation Committee would like to formally request that the county seek funding for a feasibility study that could help determine if an active transportation facility connecting the town core to the north and south end ferry terminals, something similar to a regional trail or a side path along Vashon Highway, something like that, whether or not that aligns with community goals and is physically and financially feasible to construct on Vashon-Maury Islands. Today, I motion that this request of the county be added to the agenda for a community vote at the April General Council meeting. Would anybody else like to second that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. And that's all I have on that. David?
Are there other items of new business to be brought up at this time? Okay. Well, I don't see any new business, anything in the chat. Okay. Then there is David Dow from King County on the King County needs list for Vashon. Is David Dow on this call? David? I don't see David Dow. Or David Daw, sorry, maybe I mispronounced it. Okay, and Diane, have you been able to get in contact with Lisa Floyd?
No, I'm calling her office right now. I'm going to leave a message for her.
Oh,
That's
okay.
all I can do, really.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And it's unfortunate, but this happens, and it will just make our meeting a little bit shorter tonight. The next item that we've been having on our agenda is an open discussion. And the open discussion is intended for new ideas and for anything people feel that they want to address with the community. So I'd like to open up the floor to anyone who would like to bring up an issue for discussion. Well, you know, you don't have to all speak at the same time.
David,
Okay.
I think that Michaela Olivari, forgiveness if I'm mispronouncing that name, would like to talk a little bit about the Public Safety Committee.
Oh, great, great. Michaela, please do. I can't see you at this point.
Can you see? Okay. Yeah, so I was just asked to read for Bailey DeYoung because they couldn't make it to the meeting. So they asked me to read information that they had gathered, and that was all. So I don't know when you want to do that.
Now is great. Thank you.
Okay. So information is in November 2020, voters in King County supported amendments to the King County Charter to make the sheriff position appointed, not elected, and to permit the county council to change the duties of the sheriff's office. This vote came after tragic police killings of Black men and women amidst the pandemic brought a summer of attention to the need for major changes in policing around the world. To implement the charter amendments, the county council adopted an ordinance establishing an advisory group regarding public safety and the appointment of a new sheriff beginning January 2nd, 2022. And I have been named as one of 2 representatives for unincorporated rural areas. According to the staff report, the purpose of the committee is tied to 2 distinct bodies of work. Number 1, to engage with and receive input from stakeholders, communities, in order to provide guidance to the council and the executive in the selection, appointment and confirmation process for appointing a new sheriff, and 2, to solicit input on the values stakeholder communities hold for how law enforcement services should be provided and the ways the county could improve the delivery of law enforcement services. The committee has 13 members, 2 from rural unincorporated areas, 1 from urban unincorporated areas, 2 managers from contract cities, 2 individuals with expertise in police reform, 2 individuals from over-policed communities, 2 from police agencies, and 1 from the Office of Law Enforcement's Community Advisory Group. Recognizing that the group itself is small, the ordinance also commits the executive and the council to community stakeholders' engagement outside of and in addition to the work of the advisory committee. The committee is tasked with issuing a report by July 1st, 2021 to inform the recruitment of sheriff candidates and then to be involved during the selection process. The first meeting of the advisory committee is April 1st. I'm going to add, that's really not April Fool's either. So, all right. I am honored to be serving. The charter amendments give us in King County a historic opportunity to reevaluate and reimagine what public safety means for all members of our community and how it can best be achieved. I will keep the community council informed of plans for public outreach. If anyone would like to talk to me about this effort, please feel free to reach out to me at the email address is D as in dog, E as in Edward, I as in Indian, O as in ostrich, N as in Nancy, G as in goose, H as in Hebrew, B as in boy at gmail.com. Thank you. That's it.
Oh, thank you, Mika. And that's an important issue as well. And we're fortunate to have Bailey DeYoung as an Islander who takes an active role in these discussions. Very knowledgeable. And if anyone was at the meeting where we were talking about the charter amendments, Bailey talked about that with the sheriff. So now I understand now that David Daw will be speaking. He will be a featured speaker at the Active Transportation Committee meeting next Monday. And so if you want to hear from David Daw, I guess that will be your opportunity. Has there been any word back from Lisa Floyd? No. I don't see anything.
No, but Steve Bergman would like to speak about town center waste recycling.
Oh, great. Okay, Steve, your floor.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about waste in the town center. We're just finishing up 2 3-bin recycling stations for the Village Green and Over Park, funded by the CSA King County program. Makerspace and Zero Waste Vashon are building those, and those should be coming this spring. However, I'm sure you're all aware of the need for trash and recycling in the town center. I think we have maybe 1 or 2 trash cans available, one outside the pharmacy, and it's always filled. It's a huge problem. It's an embarrassment for in here to see the sad state of recycling that's going on downtown. We've talked to the Chamber of Commerce, and unfortunately, they're not willing to take this on. And the may be the best resource. And so I'm just asking if anyone in the group would be interested in forming a committee to deal with the environment, perhaps, and starting with major on dealing with trash and recycling in the town center. Thank you.
Well, Steve, in following a long tradition of the community council, perhaps you could take on the role of temporary chair of that committee. Would that be possible?
I'm serving on the board of Zero Waste Vashon and Vashon Makerspace, and I'm spread rather thin. I'm building the recycling stations right now, and so I'm hoping that there are others in the community that would be able to step up and join this joy. So that's the appeal that I'm making. We need help. Thank you.
Can I ask how they are emptied now, the cans in town? And at what,
So
what's
the can outside of the pharmacy is emptied periodically by Tyler, the owner of the pharmacy. It's rather embarrassing. Although he's doing it out of courtesy because he did not install the can. It sort of appeared long before he took over. The Parks has graciously agreed to empty two of the three bins at the Village Green and at Ober Park, the recycling and the landfill bins. However, we are currently trying to identify a system for the organic waste bin for the three bin system at the Village Green. And so you'll be hearing more about that as that is opened up for the first April 3rd farmers market this year. So Viga and Parks and Makerspace Airways Vashon are all partnering on this effort. Any other questions?
Yes, Steve. So who would ordinarily be responsible for emptying such a bin?
Well, if we were in a city, it would be the city government. Unincorporated
Right.
King County, I've made requests through the county, through Bong and a number of other groups, through Metro and others, to see if we can't get some county support to have servicing of central bins, both recycling and trash. If we're going to put a trash can, we should have a recycling so we can at least not send everything to the landfill. And so we need combined bins. And so Bong, I've never heard anything back from you, so perhaps we could revive that from last year if Bong is still on. Yeah, hi Bong.
Yeah, Bong, if it's possible to maybe speak to John Taylor and get back to us on that issue, that seems like King County Solid Waste might be an organization that could deal with this. Is it possible for you? Can't hear. I think you're muted, Bong, or you need to turn up the sound a bit. Oh, you just muted it now. Just turning up the sound. Sorry. We're having a hard time hearing you, Bong. Okay, let's wait a moment.
Okay.
There. Okay, that's better.
Apologies for my equipment. It's low bid. That's why. Anyway, the county doesn't really pick up trash. I mean, in unincorporated King County, there is really no, I mean, the business owners are supposed to be doing that, right? Picking it up. We've tried at certain areas to bring in outside crews to help clean up the place. And we've done that in White Center, brought in a conservation corps. And what they do is they actually clean the area and then pick up the trash. What I can do is I'll bring it up to my office tomorrow and see what we can actually do. Do you have it all mapped out, like what areas that needed picking up? Or is it just one location?
There are several locations in the town center that would benefit from it.
Okay.
And yeah, the Chamber of Commerce is pretty adamant that it's not their within their bailiwick.
Oh no, it's usually the store.
Although I personally think that it is.
Wow. Well, let me see what we can do. Because I know we've gotten requests from other jurisdictions, other areas in unincorporated, and others we can do, but others we really can't do. So, is it on a public right of way? Is it on private area?
I think the existing trash stand is on a private area. It's near a parking lot.
Okay. I know we can't do that. So, let me find out. Okay, I'll reach out to David tomorrow, and I'll reach out to you, David Vogel, and let you know what I find out. If we can bring a conservation corps out there. Okay.
Thanks.
That would be great. Thank you, Bong.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the next meeting is going to be April 19th. And perhaps we could hear more about the Department of Community and Human Health Service survey at that point. But in any event, thank you all for participating, and your participation is critical to the island. So thank you all and keep it up. And we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. And I would encourage people to participate in the Ferry, the Fauntleroy Ferry discussions that are coming up, those meetings, and also to anyone that wants to join the Active Transportation Committee or the Affordable Housing Committees that are being formed. Please do that. So thank you all, and we will see you next month. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
David,
Hi, is that you, Kyle? Your hair looks different. I didn't recognize you.
I let it down. I just copied the items on the side
Okay.
in the chat box that I have access to.
So it doesn't copy it automatically then.
I think from my feature, because I'm not hosting, I have to manually copy it. But in all honesty, there might just be more research that I need to do
Because I tried to manually copy it and I couldn't, so.
Yeah, it takes a little effort, but it works.
How did you do it?
And yeah, so I've got these ones. Again, I can only see what's public or what was directly messaged to me. So I've got a few ones that were just direct messages and otherwise just the public ones. And otherwise.
You have to do it while it's happening?
Like right now while it's live, because once I close the meeting, it will disappear. So I'm trying, and I realize we have one other caller in still here too.
Yeah, I wonder who that is.
I don't know. They just unmuted for a second, but either way, I know we're going to be ending soon. But as we're still here, yeah. So I just copied it manually. I guess I'm just going to tell you that. So I just selected it and then screen and then saved it. I understand that anybody of the community could do that, but this is how I've been doing it.
I think that's a good way to do it. I mean, it makes
Until I can figure out a better way. That's what we're working with.
exactly. Well, thanks for doing that.
Thank you for doing this too. Have a great evening.
You too. Look after yourself too.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, good night.
Good night. I have to let this person know we're leaving.
Yes. Good night, person on the phone.
Person on the phone, we're leaving now. Hello? Lock a person to this location, no. Well, I don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna stop the recorder now. That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Okay.
Okay.